to my podcast, Who Says You Can't? I'm your hostess, Chelle, short from Chelle Stevens. And in this podcast, I'm going to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about what juicy things I'm going to be talking about. So who says you can't? And if you say anybody's name other than yourself, well, then you better think again, because the only one who says you can't do something is yourself. You're the only one that can give yourself permission to do anything you want. So we'll be talking about all the instances where you can say to yourself, well, who says I can't? Starting with me in my journey. I decided at 4 years ago to contemplate my journey and contemplate where I was at in my journey. So I decided to go within and write a book upon the nudging of my inner being. So I'm going to start with 4 years ago, with the journey I call being in limbo, being in purgatory, where you're in the waiting room and you take a while you're in the waiting room and you take a look at where you've been and what your life was like. So I began with thinking about what life was like when I was a child. And here comes the rest of the story. I was brought up in a really tiny town of Bedford, New Hampshire, where, there weren't a lot of people, and I led a very sheltered life. But I knew very young on, when I was a child, that I just thought differently than everybody else. I just figured everybody else thought the same as I did, meaning, anything I ever wanted to do, or everything I tried, everything I dreamed of doing, I would just think about it and I would just do it. It just was so easy and effortless. I didn't have to really put a whole lot of effort into anything. And I quickly realized that other people didn't think the same way that I did. So I kind of hid that ability, and for a very long time. In fact, to the tune of being married for 25 years and having 2 children, and all of a sudden getting to the point when my son was 18 and my daughter was 5, that I didn't even know who the heck I was anymore. I just felt like I had all these different versions of me, and none of them were really the true version. But I didn't even know who or what that true version was. So I made the best choice that I could ever make in my life, and I decided to walk away from a 25-year marriage and start over to figure out who the heck I was. Have my own personality, have my own thoughts, and not have to answer to others, and be able to be my true authentic self. Well, it's been quite a journey, and you'll be hearing more about that in the near future in my podcasts coming up. But suffice it to say that I started that spiritual journey 18 years ago, and about 10 years ago I became a very avid meditator. And I'll tell you, that made all the difference in the world. Up to that point, it took me a long time to kind of, muddle through all the events that took place in my life and why they happened. And when I finally started to go within, meaning, go within myself to figure out who I truly was, instead of asking anybody or going on the outside to get those answers, that's when I really began to open up my mind and began to open up my ears into listening to my inner being. So about right about the time when COVID came, about 4 years ago, I all of a sudden got very ill. I couldn't even hardly walk in the grocery store. I was so out of breath. And so I went to the doctor and found out that I had severe anemia. And where a normal blood count is like 11, mine was down to 8. And so that's why I had absolutely no energy whatsoever. I was just lifeless. And they couldn't figure out where I was losing blood. It took a whole year before a wonderful young doctor figured out that I had this 30-year-old hernia that was rubbing against my diaphragm. The hernia was pretty large and it was bleeding into my stomach, and that's where I was losing the blood. And I was so fortunate because that was a surgery. I had a surgery to repair my hernia, and I'm as good as new. But I'll tell you what, during that year, I made the most progress, even though it was the worst time that I ever had to go through, because I was bedridden. I was on the couch. I really couldn't get up to even take a shower. I'd sit in the shower. I couldn't get up to do the dishes. I couldn't walk to the mailbox. It was very debilitating. And at first I was really angry, because that's not the kind of lifestyle that I'm used to. I'm very active. And when I finally gave in and I finally stopped being mad and I finally just surrendered to my circumstances and surrendered to myself to just go within and use the time wisely, is when a whole new world evolved for me. And during that time, it was I can't even begin to tell you. My only friend was my inner being, talking to my inner being and having that conversation within. And I just learned a lot about myself. So my inner being prompted me to write a book. While you're down and out and you can't do anything else, I'll help you. We'll just knock this book out. And so it took me about 3 months to just knock the book out chapter after chapter. It just flowed so effortlessly. I just typed away. I could sit at my computer I could sit in the chair as long as I wasn't exerting myself. And I just typed away chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter. It just flowed. Have you ever been just in the zone and it's effortless and you don't have to? Well, I used to feel that when I was a child, and I haven't really felt that again until now. And so I wrote my book, and it's called Reinventing Your Badass Self. It's taken me a long time to finally find the right version of myself after I had reinvented my people-pleasing suit for so many years. I can finally replace that one with my badass, authentic self suit. And so my inner being prompted me to write the book and help others, because I love to help others, and help others by sharing your journey, and so that maybe it won't take them 15 years to figure it out all on their own, because it doesn't really need to take that long. So that, in a nutshell, is who I am, and I'm really excited to come out and share all these things with you. I have branded and LLC'd my new company called Chelle Talks, and it's because Chelle likes to talk. I don't blatheroon about things. I normally will get right to the point, and I don't hold back. I am bluntly honest, and I may say some things and share some things that will shock you, because I've gone through some things in my life, my friends. But I have no judgment, and I hope you hold no judgment against me because this is a judgment-free zone. So, part of my YouTube channel on Chelle Talks is going to be where I have my podcasts. My podcast is called Who Says You Can't? And I'm also going to share some insightful things on my Nothing is Off Limits part of my channel. No subject is off limits, my friends, because, we're all free to be able to speak what we need to speak and be heard when we speak. So there's going to be no subject off limits. Be on the watch out for those episodes because there'll be some doozies in there. I mean, I'll be talking about some things. And you'll be wanting to hear what I have to say because they're juicy. But they're honest and they're true. So if you don't like bluntly honest people, then I guess you're not going to like me. But I'm hoping that you do because it is my soul's mission. I finally do know what my soul's mission is, and that is to help humanity to reconnect with their true, authentic self. Because then and only then will you be free, my friends. So that's Chelle in a nutshell. Now that you've heard the introduction to Who Says You Can't, and you know a little bit about myself and about the book I wrote, Reinventing Your Badass Self, and about my spiritual journey, then you're pretty much up to date with the point at which I wrote my book, which was a little over 3 years ago. And so the next podcast that I'm getting ready to do is going to explain the period between the time that I wrote my book and really created the new version of my true authentic self, and the time it's taken me since then, which has been a little over 3 years. I'm going to call this period of my life the waiting room door. That's what my next podcast is going to be called, the waiting room door. Because I feel like this period has been like I've been in the waiting room. Like I feel like I've been in purgatory or in limbo, stemming from my childhood Catholic upbringing, purgatory. But I feel like I've been in this waiting room, waiting for the last 3 years to present my true authentic self to the world. And I'm sitting in here and I'm contemplating my life and seeing, what's going to be on the other side of that door. And as I'm looking at that door day after day, week after week, month after month, wondering, when do I get to go through that door? What's on the other side of that door? And so my next podcast is going to be me saying to me, who says you can't open the door? What are you waiting for? And there you have it. Well, I'm really hoping that you enjoyed this episode of my Who Says You Can't. And I'm really looking forward to next week, where we'll get to the rest of the story. Love and light, my friends. I will be talking with you soon. Chelle out for now. Bye.